Welcome to podcast Salmonella. I'm Tim.
This is Chris.
Doing a little something different this week. We haven't seen Chris in a while, and I just thought it would be cool if we got back together. And we actually just got back from seeing Deadpool, which is pretty much all the rage at the movies this weekend, being that it's Valentine's Day weekend. And we'll talk about some other things, but let's talk about the Deadpool movie first, because that's...
Okay, we're going to jump right into it.
Yeah, let's just jump right in. No bullshit introductions or anything. People have been listening to this long enough. I think they know it by now. So, Deadpool. I think I liked Deadpool a little more than Chris did. I think he expected more from it, and I wasn't. But I'll let him talk about it. But,
I didn't care much for it, but I think before we actually talk about the movie, maybe we should talk about like our history with the character and I guess or just comic books in general, because I think that's gonna explain a little bit more of where we're coming from towards the character in the movie.
I guess so. I think I've explained it a little bit, but I can explain it again just for anyone who might be listening in for the first time. I'm not a huge comic book fan.
Same here.
I've mainly read Batman comics, but that's been a recent thing. But rediscovering them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as far as other comic books, not really. And the only things I know is what I learned through mainly media and things like that. So
I'm kind of coming from the same place. I didn't grow up with comic books.
Mm-hmm.
I was more of a movie and TV show kind of a kid.
Yeah, I was too.
So like I didn't really I knew of Superman and Batman and stuff, and I was familiar with these characters, but I wasn't like really a big fan of them. I would see the movies and the cartoons and TV shows, but that was kind of about the extent of it.
Yeah.
My only real exposure to comic books was I would buy Wizard magazine and just kind of read about that.
Absolutely.
And the few comic books that I did have were more like kind of independent properties, which oddly enough were adapted into movies and stuff, like The Mask, which was a great comic book, okay movie.
Yeah. I don't think that movie holds up particularly well.
I think it does. I watched it a couple years ago with my niece, and I was surprised I liked it as much as I did.
It's very broad, but at the same time, I guess you can forgive the crudity of the effects. I mean, they looked great at the time, but they look a little crude now. But the point is, Tex Avery sort of thing. So I guess you can kind of forgive it in that capacity.
And I'll bring up The Mask when we talk about Deadpool. Yeah. But like I also had a couple of issues of The Max, which was made into a really well done MTV cartoon back in the 90s.
What is The Max?
The Max was a big purple guy with a weird toothy mask. I'll have to show you a picture of him later. But
I don't remember that.
It was a really cool book and story and cartoon. And one comic that I actually really, really love is Scud the Disposable Assassin, which has a really great art style, which is really what sold me on that book, because like I got really bored with, when I would read Wizard magazine, I got kind of bored of like the big muscly superhero characters, and the drawing style at some point just started to blend all together, and I got kind of bored with that. And Scud the Disposable Assassin had a really interesting art style, which I'll show you that too after we're done with this episode. But those were some of the comics that I actually did have when I was a kid. Not all of them. I had like maybe 2 or 3 issues of one or the other. So I didn't really grow up with comics. Again, I was just more of a movie, TV show kind of a kid.
I was always around them though. I mean, I had a couple of them. I had a couple of Spider-Mans and a couple of Batmans when I was a kid, but I was never like aggressively going out to buy them or anything.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at my cousin's house and he had a copy of The Killing Joke.
Okay.
And it hadn't been out for very long, I don't think, maybe a year or two. And I loved it, you know. But I mean, as far as, you know, exposure to comics and everything, that was pretty much my exposure, and movies and TV shows and cartoons and everything, like you said. So it's only later in life that I felt the need to go and discover some of this stuff. So yeah.
What about like Deadpool? Like, what's your familiarity with like the character?
No fucking clue whatsoever outside of X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay,
that's it.
Yeah, I knew about the character when that movie came out. I knew they got him wrong in the movie when I saw it, and I did have a friend at the time who was really into comics, and I even asked them, like, after I'd seen that movie, I was like, hey, did you see the new Wolverine movie? and he said, yeah, I hated what they did to the character of Deadpool, and I was like, I thought that was not what the character is supposed to be, and he kind of explained the character to me, and in recent years, you know, the character has become this very popular, in my opinion, overrated character, kind of like the same way Harley Quinn is.
Yeah.
And I did do like a little research into the character, maybe like a year ago, just to get familiar and see like what the big deal was with him. And you know, I like the idea of him, you know, in terms of like how, in a sense, anarchistic he is in terms of breaking the fourth wall, cracking jokes and stuff. But I never really saw anything that really made me feel like it warranted all this hype about him. Same thing with like Harley Quinn, because like Harley Quinn is everywhere, and I remember her from the Batman animated series, and I thought she was fine there, but you know, in years she's just become this huge cult character.
She's eclipsed all of the other females in the Batman universe pretty much,
which is a shame, because I think Catwoman is a far more interesting character.
I agree.
So it's kind of a shame that Catwoman's being pushed aside for a character like Harley Quinn, but
but because Harley Quinn, all that Harley Quinn really is just a crazy lady who loves her boyfriend, and her boyfriend happens to be a crazy person also. But there's nothing complicated about her. There's lots complicated about Selena Kyle, aka Catwoman.
Yeah, I always really loved Catwoman because she was really kind of more of an ambiguous character. She was kind of in a gray area where, you know, she could be a villain. She could sort of be a good guy, but she's just kind of in that gray area where, and that kind of makes her a more interesting character, in my opinion.
Part of the pull to the good is her attraction to Batman.
Yeah,
and that's a thing. Like,
they have a pretty interesting relationship.
Dynamic. They have a dynamic going between them where it's like, I really like him and I want to help him, but I also want to do my own thing and be a jewel thief and do other things, you know. So she's always conflicted.
Yeah.
And that makes her interesting, as opposed to Harley Quinn, who's just like, I'm crazy and I'm going to carry around this sledgehammer and kill people, you know.
And that's why I get the appeal of Harley Quinn, and in a sense I get the appeal of Deadpool, but I never really saw or read anything about Deadpool that really sold me on him. So that's why I always just kind of felt like, oh, well, it just seems like another Harley Quinn situation where everybody loves him because the internet.
Yeah. Well, when I heard about the Deadpool, when they were going to make a movie out of it, everybody said, well, they did really poorly by him by the Wolverine movie. And I'm like, oh, really? Why is that? And it's like, well, he's sort of an R-rated character. He's really quippy and just very anti-superhero-ish. And I'm like, okay, I guess I can understand, you know, the uproar about that, because he wasn't that at all in that movie.
I remember seeing the little animated like test reel that they did to, I guess it was supposed to be like a pitch to get the Deadpool movie made. Yeah. And I thought that was pretty cool. I saw that and I was like, I would like to see this as a movie. And knowing what I know about the character, I was actually kind of looking forward to an anti-superhero movie, because like right now we're so oversaturated with superhero movies. I'm really kind of burned out on them, and I'm kind of sick of them. I'm kind of done with the Marvel Universe crap, and you know, I wanted to see something new. I'm kind of bored of seeing the superheroes need to save the world or save the city, and I wanted to see something different. I wanted to see something a little more out there, and also too, I wanted to see something a little more adult, which is why I really liked the second Captain America movie, because it was a little more serious while still being a superhero movie. Yeah. But I just wanted something a little different from what we've been getting. And when I heard about a Deadpool movie and that they were going to try and do it, you know, as a service to the fans and the character, I was pretty intrigued by that. So I was hoping this would be the thing that would sell me on Deadpool. But, you know, we just got back from the movie, and this is actually my second time seeing it, which I'm kind of glad I saw it a second time, because the first time I saw it just literally a couple of days ago.
Thursday, and then you saw it today. So. And
it's Saturday right now, and I forgot a lot of the movie because none of it really stuck with me.
That's not a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll get into that. You've
forgotten most of the movie, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a very simple movie, but just aspects of it, they didn't stick with me.
Right.
But
Well, for anyone who doesn't know anything about Deadpool and you're curious about, and you're thinking about going to see the movie and you don't know anything about it, it's very pared down to what I said earlier. He's sort of a superhero-ish kind of character. He's basically been screwed over by the people who turned him into a quote-unquote mutant. And he's out to get revenge against them because they did it against his will.
Should we say spoiler alert before we go any further?
Yeah, let's do that.
In case anybody cares.
Yeah, if you care about being spoiled over this movie, spoiler alert from here on in. All things considered, I liked the movie. I didn't love it. I ran into a couple of things, but the things that I ran into were probably more minor than the problems you had with it.
What were your issues with the movie?
Well, as far as a character is concerned, his abilities.
Okay.
His abilities bothered me a little bit because he has a background in the military, and I think at one point they say he was discharged.
Yeah, they briefly mention it.
Yeah, they say he was discharged under not so good circumstances. I forget the term for it.
Yeah,
I don't remember. But anyways, and so he's had a background in military, and when he gets, the only ability that he gets when they turn him into a mutant is ability to heal. He has cancer. Before he gets his abilities, and it heals his cancer. If he gets a limb cut off, it'll grow back eventually, or if he's stabbed, the hole will repair itself or any of that. But he doesn't get like superhuman
strength or abilities
like being really fast or really good with guns or swords or anything. So I bumped into that where I was like, yeah, he's got this ability to heal really well, but why is he all of a sudden good with guns and knives and everything?
Yeah.
It's like, they try to act like some time has passed between him getting his abilities into him becoming Deadpool, but it doesn't seem that way. It didn't come across that way very well to me.
Yeah, they just didn't really explain or display the passage of time or how much time has passed. So, I mean, I can understand, like, there's a montage where he's becoming Deadpool, and, I guess you have to say, okay, well, we don't know how much time is passing, but he's acquiring all these skills and training and building himself to be a good swordsman and handle all these guns and do all these ridiculous things.
It breaks down into a montage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with, but they just don't explain that very well, and in a movie like this, I guess you have to kind of pick and choose what you're acceptable with and what you're not in terms of stuff like that. Because, again, with a movie like this, it's supposed to be something different and a little more out there than from what we're accustomed to, just in terms of movies and superhero movies.
But at the same time, I don't know if you've seen them or not, the Netflix shows that they're doing right now, the Daredevil and Jessica Jones, fucking perfect.
Okay.
I'm not into this superhero thing. These are not superhero shows. These are shows about people and the shit. They just happen to have some superhuman abilities. They don't use them all that often. It's more about interpersonal relationships and the hell and the demons that they're going through, especially Jessica Jones. She's pretty much trying to get over mind rape and everything else.
Wow.
Just dealing with that. And Daredevil isn't quite that dark, but it is still pretty dark.
Yeah, I know those two shows are supposed to be a little more gritty and
they're fucking
a little
killing
more realistic.
They're really good
for the most part.
Really excellent shows. Forget superheroes; they're just really good shows. So, and I can see Deadpool being, if they give it a little more time, like we were talking about how him becoming Deadpool, it happens over a montage. That would be like almost a whole season if they did it as a show on Netflix, which they never would because that's a different property in different hands. Like there's the Marvel and Disney, and then there's the Marvel and 20th Century Fox. And he's playing right now at 20th Century Fox because he's basically an X-Men character, so they can't really do that.
Yeah.
I wish they could have, though, because I think his character would have been a little better served, and I think they would also have more time to spend on the things that you had problems with.
Yeah, I mean, that aspect of the movie was, I didn't even really consider that. It kind of struck me out of nowhere when they kind of just in the throwaway line mentioned that he had been gone for a couple of years. So I was like, oh, that's how long this has been going on. Okay, so that just kind of threw me for a loop, but I didn't think about it afterwards because with all of the other stuff going on with the movie, and also too the things that I had a problem with the movie, that was just kind of a nothing thing in the grand scheme of things when I was watching it for the first time and even the second time. And I'm not saying the movie sucks, because the movie doesn't suck.
Not at all.
To me, it's just underwhelming. I just personally didn't care for it. My problem with it is I don't go into movies expecting things, because I want the movie to be a movie when I see it, so I can have the experience and judge for myself.
Yeah.
So I try not to go in with any expectations, but knowing what I know about the character and how much of a following he has and what he's known for, I was expecting the movie to be a little more out there in terms of what it was going to get away with, breaking the fourth wall, how wacky it's going to be, how funny it's going to be. Because, Deadpool's a character that's known for his comedy.
Right.
So, not only was I looking for some good action, I was looking for really good jokes and a little more anarchy in terms of, like, just a conventional movie-going experience.
Yeah, and it's in there.
It's in there, but I was expecting them to go a little further with it. And my main problem with the movie is, while it's trying to be the anti-superhero movie, it also falls into the conventions of being a superhero movie, and it doesn't go as far as it should with things, because yes, it's rated R, you've got the blood, you've got the gore, you've got the cursing, you've got the nudity, and I appreciate that because, we're adults. These are the kind of movies that, this is the kind of movie that we want to see as an adult. Like, we like seeing the PG-13 superhero movies, but it's kind of interesting to see a superhero movie with blood and gore and nudity and violence. It kind of harkens back to stuff like Darkman and The Crow, where, we're adults. We can handle this, but we can also have a superhero in the midst of all this violence and, all these adult situations. But
does he need a love interest, though?
And that's where it falls into the conventions, because,
yes.
It's trying to do all these things where it's not a conventional superhero movie, but it falls into doing the conventions of, okay, well, obviously, of course, we have to have the origin story, because this is a movie that's being released to mass audiences who may not know Deadpool very well, kind of like, the two of us. So we need some kind of explanation so we can understand who this character is. But,
For me, I felt like he had so much to do with the revenge plot that the conventional love story, it's not an afterthought, but it sort of feels like a little bit of an afterthought because it's so conventional. And to me, it would be better served as if it was like hinted at rather than explored. Like, there's a promise of a budding relationship between these two people that maybe we'll see in another movie.
Well, actually, I kind of like that was in this movie, even conventional it may be, because that was done really well. People are saying, oh, this is a Valentine's movie, and it kind of works as a Valentine's movie because, the two main characters, Wade Wilson and I forget what her name in the movie was. Vanessa, yeah. Their chemistry together is probably one of the best parts of the movie. Morena Baccarin is easily my favorite part of the movie, and I wish she was in the movie more. And I wish she had more to do. Yeah. So that's where the movie was kind of problematic for me, because we've got this character Deadpool who breaks the fourth wall, talks to the audience, has all these quippy lines and jokes and one-liners, but the movie's told in a flashback format where it starts kind of in the middle of the story, and you're flashing back to see how he got to this point.
Right.
And this is the origin story part of the movie, and this is where it's conventional, because you've got Wade Wilson, the character, he meets the girl, he finds out what's wrong with him, he needs to do something so he can live, and he gets his powers and becomes Deadpool. And then we pick up from where the movie began and we continue the story. So all of the origin story stuff is basically conventional superhero stuff, but when we've got the Deadpool scenes, you're doing all the Deadpool stuff, cracking the jokes, breaking the fourth wall, and
maybe it's like that in the comics. I don't know. I've never read
them,
so I can't say for sure. I just know going into this, it seemed like it was going to be something a little more different than what it was.
Well, the thing is, like, you've got all of those Deadpool-isms, but throughout the conventional superhero story, there's not really any of that breaking the fourth wall. It's just, Deadpool might chime in here while he's narrating the story, but you're really just kind of seeing Wade Wilson as a character and a person, and he's quippy and snarky, but there's never really breaking of the fourth wall or anything too out there. And I think if they had thrown a little bit of that in there, it would have been a little more consistent. But because there's none of that in the backstory, it feels very inconsistent when he finally becomes Deadpool, and then he is looking at the camera and he is talking to us.
Right.
And another major problem I had was that I just didn't find the movie very funny. There are a few scenes where I did laugh out loud, and there are some funny ideas, but they just weren't done very well, especially with the jokes, because, I expected to laugh a lot more at this movie, and I think a lot of the jokes fell flat because they relied too much on referential humor and millennial jokes. So like when you've got stuff like, oh, hashtag it, friend me, I saw it on your Instagram, stuff like that. It made me groan, because I'm just like, I was expecting this movie's jokes and one-liners and quips to be a little more well-written and clever than millennial jokes and referential humor.
Some of the best jokes in the movie are the fourth wall breaking stuff.
Yeah.
Like when Colossus is dragging him, after he beats him up, and he's dragging him in handcuffs. And he's dragging him along, and he says, "I need to take you to see the professor." And he's like, Stewart or McAvoy. I can't keep track of them anymore.
The timelines, yeah. Yes. And when the movie does that stuff well, it's really funny. Yeah. But a lot of times,
like he showed up at the mansion to get their help, and it's only. The girl, I don't know.
Megasonic,
Megasonic
Teenage Warhead, or whatever.
That was great. Such a great name.
Yeah, I do like that, actually.
And Colossus. And you think in the back of your head, aren't there any other X-Men? This is the mansion. And he makes reference to it, and he's like,
I'll wait out here.
Yeah, I'll wait out here. Seems like you're the only two here. The studio must not have been able to afford any more X-Men, or he said something along those lines.
And meta humor can be really annoying too, and thankfully they didn't get too meta.
Right,
with the humor.
they just throw it in every now and then.
Yeah, but I really like the stuff where
they call that, in writing terms, they call that hanging a lantern on it.
Oh, I've never heard of
where
that.
It's like, we all know this is bullshit. Let's just point it out.
But to me, a lot of the things that I wanted more of and I thought worked on a better level of humor was, you've got Deadpool being very silly and cartoony amidst all of this violence and action and gore. Like there's the scene after the big car accident, and he's just skipping around singing the name of the character he's looking for. Or when he turns around and realizes the person he's trying to get escaped, he gets wide-eyed, covers his mouth over his mask with his hands, and gasps in a very silly way. I really like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was the stuff that really worked in terms of humor. The actual like one-liners and quips and attempts at snark, a lot of those just fell flat for me, just because I didn't think they were very clever, well written, and that was what was making the movie tedious for me, because I wanted to be laughing at this character more and I wanted to laugh at the jokes more, and at some point I just started getting very bored with the movie because it just wasn't doing it for me on that aspect.
Yeah, and then there's the ending, which he finally gets to the guy who has wronged him, breaks both his arms, and he's sitting on top of him with a gun, getting ready to blow his head off. Colossus comes in and goes on this long soliloquy about
being a hero
and what it means to be a hero and all that stuff. And while he's in the middle of it, he just shoots him, and Colossus suddenly starts throwing up.
That was hilarious, and that's probably the loudest I laugh at the movie. Yeah. That's one of the funnier scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing about this movie, like, it's trying to... It's being satirical about superhero movies, which I like, because whenever he's interacting with Colossus and Megasonic Teenage Warhead, or whatever her name was, I'm just going to call her Megasonic.
Megasonic is great.
So whenever he's interacting with them, Colossus, for the most part's saying, hey, you got to join the X-Men, be a hero with us. And I like that they're kind of talking about how all these superhero movies, they're basically, we're the good guys, we're the Boy Scouts, and we're, here to do the right thing. And one of the things I liked about Deadpool is here's a guy who, he's going to kill the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I like about Deadpool, the movie, is that I'm really sick of the superhero formula right now where it's like, we've got to save the city, we've got to save the world. This is just more a revenge story of him chasing down this guy who wronged him. And the movie tries to have it both ways where, it's trying not to be that superhero movie and it falls into the traps of being that superhero movie.
Right.
So it just feels very inconsistent. I wish the movie had gone all out with just being I wanted it to be a little more insane than it was. Yeah. I just wanted to go 100% with it because that's what they were supposed to do.
And that's why a lot of people, we were talking about it and I said, if you're looking for a superhero movie that is an anti-superhero movie, Super is the movie you watch. Mm-hmm. Not Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass also has that problem where it's like we're trying to be an unconventional superhero movie, but it falls into being a conventional superhero movie. Super doesn't do that. Super is basically about a crazy person that does crazy things. And he's never a superhero, ever.
But what I like about the Deadpool movie in comparison to like Kick-Ass and Super is that we've got a legitimate superhero. He's got superpowers, and he's got the actual costume. Like, with Kick-Ass and Super, these are guys...
I bumped into that a little bit, too.
Yeah.
The costume.
These are guys who are just homemade superheroes. So, but with this, it's more interesting because we've got a legitimate superhero, and that's what's supposed to make it more interesting. But when they don't really go all out with it, that's where I got underwhelmed with it. The movie, I mean, like I said, I won't sit here and say the movie sucks because it doesn't suck. There's good stuff and there's good ideas. I just think it was, I don't think they followed through with it as much as they could. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that they went as far as they did with it being rated R, having the violence, having the gore, having the nudity. I appreciate all of that because
there wasn't a ton of nudity either.
No, I mean there was enough to where it didn't feel
mainly butt shots.
Yeah, I mean you've got the scene in the strip club, but it wasn't like
right. I forgot about it.
It wasn't.
How could I forget about titties?
Well, it wasn't gratuitous,
right? To
where it felt like unnecessary. I mean, they weren't very blatant about it. There were other things that were blatant about, like with the cursing, because at some point it felt like, hey, we've got a rated R movie. Let's just throw all this cursing
Dream
and
up
stuff.
some horrible shit that we can say.
And that's where the writing fell flat for me because I would expect the cursing to feel a little more natural and funny, but they're trying to override it by saying things like, what was the Muppet line? Muppet stain. I don't even remember what ridiculousness they wrote.
Some ridiculous line.
They just tried too hard to write funny lines and they weren't funny.
Right.
And that's where my main problem was because, again, Deadpool's a character that is known for his lines and quippiness, and I think a lot of the jokes just fell flat.
A lot of those jokes I kept thinking of the Angry Video Game Nerd the whole time. Anytime he would make one of those ridiculous Muppet stain whatever lines, I would always think of Angry Video, because that's how Angry Video Game Nerd basically made his whole career, was just dreaming up some horrible shit to say. He was also like the first person who was doing video game reviews sorta on YouTube, but he was also the person.
But it was really mostly the colorful language.
Yeah, was. That's what was selling it.
Yeah,
and I didn't find it all that funny.
I did because at that point we had never heard ways of using language like that before. So I guess after being accustomed to that for so long, hearing them try to attempt that in this, it just didn't work because it just wasn't as good or funny or clever.
It never worked for me, though.
A lot of the comedy or attempts at comedy, I should say, in Deadpool, a lot of it felt really forced to me. Like they were trying way too hard. And that's where I was just kind of checking out with the humor aspects of it.
But I keep trying to tell myself this, and I told you this, that comedy can be subjective.
Yeah.
And I think in this case it is. I think it's your how much you find this funny would all depend on you as a person.
Yeah,
and I think that's what you're bumping into here.
For me personally, like my taste in humor, like I don't mind dark humor. I don't mind absurdity. I like jokes. I like situations. I like cleverness and snarkiness and something that's really well written.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the funniest shows to me is Blackadder, which if you haven't seen it,
Blackadder's great. Yeah.
Blackadder's comedy is very verbal.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sarcastic and witty and snarky, and I was kind of expecting not that exact type of humor out of Deadpool, but I was expecting it to be more than
something approaching that.
I was expecting it to be more clever and not referential humor and millennial jokes like Instagram and hashtagging and Facebook and tweeting. Because for me, I like stuff to be a little more timeless. I'm okay with referential humor in small doses.
Yeah.
But at some point, I want to be able to watch this movie 10 years from now and have the jokes still be funny.
You got to think long term too. You got to think 10, 20, 30 years from now. Somebody that's never seen Deadpool before watching it, and they weren't even born yet when it came out, and they watch it for the first time and they're like, what's Instagram? What is that?
Yeah, like I think, what was I asked you about this earlier. There was like a joke in the cab where it said something like Mama June on a summer day, and I still don't get that joke.
I don't either.
I was like, is that a food? Is that I don't get it. So
I need to look it up, but I have no idea.
That's where referential humor really sucks, because
if you don't get the reference, there's no joke.
And it's not timeless, and it's also kind of cheap, because it's like, if they make a reference to Wham or, some 80s movie or Voltron, I laugh at those jokes because it's like, I got that reference, that stupid joke in Avengers.
Right.
But other than that, it's like, okay, well, I got that reference to this because I understand what they're talking about, but it's not really a joke and it's not really funny. So as a joke, it doesn't work. It's just, I understand what they're talking about, so I can kind of giggle to myself because it's kind of like a little in-joke between us. And then when they throw a current reference to a celebrity or a TV show or a movie that I don't get, I'm just kind of sitting there where it's just like, oh, well, now I just feel left out and I'm not having very fun at this.
Right.
So that's really my big problem with the humor. The movie's not going to hold up, maybe not even 5 years from now.
No, probably not. It might be a little bit forgettable. I thought Ant-Man was a little bit forgettable.
I haven't seen it.
I felt too. But, I mean, I think the hardcore audience that goes out and sees this movie, forget the mainstream people that are going out to see it this weekend that are making it make its money. I think the hardcore audience for this movie are the ones that are really going to appreciate it and love it. The hardcore comic book fans and that really dig, that have been waiting for this character to get some kind of treatment, and I think it got really good treatment. But I didn't, not that I loved the movie, I just merely liked it. I can't say I'd watch it again.
Well, I mean, I haven't read any reviews or seen any reviews or heard too much word of mouth about what people are thinking about the movie or saying about the movie. I haven't either,
because I don't read reviews before seeing a movie. So
yeah, I mean, even having seen the movie just a couple of days ago, I still haven't read or watched anything about the movie.
Yeah.
Just review-wise, so I don't know what type of reception the movie's getting, but
I just know it's being memed to death.
Well, I mean, that's essentially what Deadpool is.
Yeah.
He's memed the superhero, and that I believe that's why this character is so popular, because internet.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the only way that a character like this could be so popular now, because in an age where memes are like the top form of comedy, it's really a crappy form of comedy in my opinion, but that's what people like nowadays. I can understand why Deadpool is so accepted as a character right now.
Yeah.
But just wasn't my thing.
No. But I mean, it's not really my thing either. But I've just come to the realization that, we're never going to be rid of these movies for any time soon.
And I don't think we should, because, we are. I mean, comic book fans are getting the movies that they've been asking for years, and for the most part, they're being done right by the fans and for the fans. But we're just getting so many of them, and they're also conventional. I feel like we're just kind of getting the same movie over and over again.
It's kind of like westerns.
Yeah,
and that's what people keep comparing these movies to. Yeah, it's like it's a modern day western. Westerns were all friggin' same.
Yeah, and that's actually, while I am over superhero movies, that's one of the reasons why I'm excited. That's one of the reasons why I liked the second Captain America movie so much, and that's why I'm looking forward to the new one, because it's not the typical, oh, we need to save the world from this it's superheroes versus supervillain to save the day. It's more internal conflict kind of stuff, and that's pretty interesting, and it's not conventional superhero stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, that stuff has always been there in the comics.
Yeah.
They just haven't explored it much in movie form.
Yeah.
You know, they've mainly been going for let's save the world.
Yeah, and
stuff.
that's why I really like the second Captain America movie, and that's why I'm really looking forward to the third one. As tired of superhero movies as I am,
the second Captain America movie was fantastic.
it was great.
It was really great. I was shocked. I hadn't seen a good movie of like that for a while, and I put it on and I was glued to it the whole time. I just sat and watched the whole thing, and not that I'm overjoyed and love the movie to death or anything like that, but it's a solid movie. It's like a solid watch. You could just sit there and watch the thing. You don't have to know anything about Captain America. You don't have to know anything about the Marvel Universe or any of that. It's just a good, solid movie.
Yeah, and I was kind of hoping that Deadpool would overtake the spot of my favorite superhero movie in this line of like new superhero movies that we've been getting, but it didn't, and it was disappointing, and the movie was just forgettable. I mean, like I said, I saw the movie a couple of days ago. I forgot a lot of it. Like, if the jokes were funny, I probably would have remembered more. Even like talking about it now, there are some things that I'm already forgetting about the movie. Because you know, if it was written better, like you were talking about his backstory on how he was like a discharged military guy. I was blanking on what they specifically said about him, because again, it was just such a throwaway line, and it just, you know, wasn't
a throwaway line to sort of explain something, but not really.
Yeah, just to let us know, hey, you know, this guy is a badass, and he is going to be able to do some cool stuff. And that was everything too. Like, we didn't see too much of Deadpool doing cool stuff. Like, we had that first action sequence. We had, of course, the end battle.
Yeah.
We have the little montage of him hunting down, you know, bad guys. But we didn't really see too much of him doing cool stuff.
And that's why I think a TV version or a Netflix version of this would do it more justice.
And I think it's because people want more of like the jokes, because again, that's what he's known for.
Yeah.
But those didn't work either.
Yeah.
So because for me personally, the jokes weren't working and we weren't seeing too much of Deadpool doing cool stuff, I just started to check out. And also too, I just thought like the whole thing of him not wanting to see Vanessa again because he was all burnt up from this, you know, experiment.
It's a very eye-rolling superhero trait.
That too, but I also thought it was kind of lame because he didn't really look that bad.
Yeah.
He looked like a burn victim, and what was funny is, you know, he's kind of following her as she walks down the street, and people are reacting to him with like real disgust. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, he doesn't look that bad. Like,
they can't really see him that well to begin with.
Yeah, like because also too, if I remember correctly in the comics, he looks way worse. And but I get it, you know, they've got a good looking actor. We've got to have him show his face.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that as well. But you could have made him way worse to justify the people's like grossed out looks at him, because like, for example, for me, if I see like a burn victim or someone with like a physical deformity or something, I'm not going to have a look of disgust or something. I'm just going to be like, oh, well, that sucks, or, you know, that's awful. But the way these people are looking at him walk down the street, they're looking like they're seeing like a monster. And I didn't think those reactions were warranted, so I was kind of rolling my eyes at that.
But that's sort of it's one of these things that, especially anything Stan Lee related, a lot of characters have a lot of the same traits, and they do a lot of the same things in the various comics. I kept thinking of Ben Grimm.
Okay.
That's what I kept thinking of when he was like, I can't let her see me, I can't let her see me.
Yeah, like that's justifiable.
That's totally Fantastic Four.
That's justifiable, but if they had made him look worse, then I can understand it, because a big portion of the movie is he doesn't want to see her because he's so hideous, but he really isn't. So I think if they had went all out with him looking horrible, then I could say, okay, that works, but I didn't buy that.
Yeah.
One thing I did like about the movie is that throughout the big whole end battle sequence, they kept his mask on.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of these superhero movies, they don't, because we've got a big name actor, we want to show their face, so we have Captain America without his mask throughout the whole big end battle.
There's no vanity there.
Yeah, I mean, in this, he had the mask on the entire time, and I actually really loved him having that mask on all the time because the face was so expressive. That was another thing that I really loved about the character in the movie, was that, you know, yeah, he has his mask on the whole time, but those animated eyes on the mask were so expressive that added a lot to the character's emoting with this mask on. And I get you can't do that with Batman and Captain America and, you know, Iron Man. You know, when Iron Man's in the suit, you've got to cut to Robert Downey Jr. in that suit. So I really appreciated that they kept his mask on and that they found, you know, they were able to emote him so much through that mask. Because a character like this needs something like that when he's cracking jokes and reacting to things, and I really appreciated that. But
it's also, you know, after the debacle that was, speaking of Fantastic Four, speaking of, you know, that debacle and how it was basically taken over by the studio to try to improve it, they didn't let it go out the way it was. This is the antithesis of that. It's done by the same studio, and they seem to have learned from their mistakes, where they were like, let's not control this. Let's sell it the way they want to sell it and go with it that way, because we tried it this way.
Yeah.
We tried to do it this way, and it didn't work. So if I was thinking of things that could have been. If it had been a studio-controlled project, he would have been burnt up everywhere except for, like, his face. And he would have, you were right, he would probably not have the mask on half the time in the end battle.
Well, I think
women could see his face.
Well, I think it was still very much studio controlled because, like I said, if it wasn't, they probably would have went way more crazy.
To a degree.
So I think
they let the reins looser than they have on recent movies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know? I mean, the fact that this is a rated R superhero movie says a lot, and I appreciate that. I appreciate seeing a rated R superhero movie in a theater like this. But again, I think they could have went a little further with all of the stuff they were doing in terms of, you know, just how crazy they could have gotten with it. And I get it. This is the first movie. They want to test it out and see how they're going to give us just enough to appease the fans and say, okay, this kind of a movie can make money. So I think with a sequel, they're going to go all out with it.
Push it even further.
Yeah, but, you know, I think they should have just did that with the first movie. I get why they didn't, but that's what I was expecting. So I think the sequel is probably going to be more of what I was expecting from this movie. But I would have much rather have seen it in this movie because it probably would have sold me.
Well, it's like X-Men and X-Men 2. You know, the X-Men movie, it was a hit and everything, but Bryan Singer really got to do what he wanted to do in the sequel.
Yeah.
And everybody claimed, you know, pretty much across the board says that X-Men 2 is the best X-Men movie that's ever been made.
I think so. I mean, I think the second X-Men, First Class, and Days of Future Past were the best ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I like those movies. I think they're fine. The first one, not that great, but, you know, it's not horrible. It's watchable.
Yeah.
But I think First Class, Future Past, and X-Men 2 were really, really good movies.
Yeah.
But this movie has its audience, and with internet culture, I can see how everyone's going to love the hell out of it. And good on you. Love it. I mean, this movie's going to speak to a lot of people. It just didn't speak to me.
Yeah.
And which is too bad because I wanted to be sold on Deadpool.
Yeah.
And I was hoping the movie would do it, but it didn't. So
I'm fine with it because it was exactly what I was expecting it to be. I think you were expecting more from it, and I wasn't. I was expecting what it was, what it wound up being, and I was fine with it. Like the little details that we talked about that I didn't like, that I bumped into.
And those are very minor.
They're minor, but at the same time they're not, because
well, again, you gotta look at it like this. I mean, this is now an outrageous comedy action movie, and with those kind of little plot points, that's more stuff that's supposed to be saved for things like Iron Man and Captain America.
Yeah.
And it belongs more in those movies than this.
I just wanted like one line. I just wanted one line of him saying, "I can heal really well. Oh my gosh, I'm really good with these guns." I'm like, you know, suddenly, like maybe that was part of.
Well, the healing thing they touched on better, but I mean,
they that's almost exclusively that's all his abilities got. Like he's all fucked up because it's the side effect of getting his powers.
Yeah.
But they never say his powers include being really good at shooting people and killing people in a very acrobatic sort of way.
Yeah.
They never say that, and so that was the thing that I ran into. And if they just had, it would have been fine if they would just have one line to cover it, just one line with him to say, "I'm suddenly really good with guns and swords," even in a meta way. He looks at the audience and said, "Yes, I'm all of a sudden really good with guns and swords." That would have been great.
That would have been funny.
Yeah.
To me, another problem was just the other characters in the movie were just really nothing. Like his bartender friend, I mean, very forgettable. The main villain, Francis, was very bland and, just uninteresting.
Yeah.
His henchwoman, she doesn't really do or say anything.
Angel, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I have a feeling she's probably going to be in a future X-Men movie.
Yeah, I think they saved her at the end. Like, I think you see Colossus carrying her after all the destruction.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, too, a big problem for me personally was, like I said, Morena Baccarin was one of the best parts of the movie. Like, her character was really funny, really sweet, really kind of out there, too.
Sexy as all can be.
And she was just really, really fun.
Yeah.
And I wanted more of her in the movie. And one thing that I was kind of getting excited for during that last final battle was it looked like she was going to get involved in the fight, which kind of got me excited. But she stabs Francis, gets knocked over, thrown to the side, and I was kind of like, okay, well, this is supposed to be the... Because that was another problem I had with the movie about it being... falling into those superhero traps.
Yeah.
I thought she was going to get a little bit more involved with that final battle.
Yeah, I did too.
So that way she had a little more to do in the movie, because for a good chunk of the movie she's gone. But that's where this movie falls into those superhero traps. It's, oh, they captured my girlfriend. I got to go save her. And she's locked in that glass tube and they're sucking the air out. So when she finally gets out and grabs that sword, I'm like, oh, cool. She's going to do stuff and she's going to get involved. And this is why Wade Wilson loves her, because she's going to get into this fight and she knows who he is already. So she's got a reason to fight this guy. And I get it. She's not super powered. So yeah, sure, she's going to get tossed around. But I thought she'd do a little bit more than just stab him and then just get tossed to the side.
That was one of the things that in the back of my mind when Ajax, he says in the movie, he got his name from a bar of soap, which is great. But Ajax, aka Francis Freeman.
I don't even remember his last name.
I think it was Freeman. He puts him in that, or he puts her in that tube to suck all the oxygen out. And I thought for a split second in the back of my mind, I thought, is she gonna come out of that tube with superpowers?
Oh, I didn't think of that.
And fight him off And I thought that would be kind of dumb if they did that.
I kind of would have liked that.
But at the same time, I'm like, that would be better than what we got.
You know what? That would have been awesome, because now that I think about it, that would have broke the superhero convention of, oh, now I have to save my girlfriend, because that would have pleased me personally, because now she's got superpowers. She can join in the fight, and now it's Deadpool and her. And I think, if I may be wrong on this, but I think she actually becomes a hero in the Deadpool comics. So if they actually had mutated her and she got superpowers and joined in the fight with Deadpool, that would have been amazing.
I also think, go back to my point about they didn't hold the reins as much on this one. I think that would have been a studio note if they'd had a tighter control on it to say, okay, the ending there where she comes out and she just gets kind of knocked to one side, that's not very good. Let's have her get her mutant powers while she's in that thing, and then she fights him off and everything.
Yeah.
But I knew they weren't going to do that, because that wasn't this movie.
I hadn't even thought about that as a possibility.
Yeah.
Her getting superpowers.
Because it would be awfully convenient, and it would feel like a studio note. If they had gone that route.
I think it felt more studio just to have her be the captured girlfriend, and
that yes, that aspect of it is totally conventional.
Yeah,
it's not a good convention at all. But her suddenly turning into a mutant would have definitely felt like a studio note to me.
I would have liked that, because
I would have liked it, but it would have been very convenient.
It would have been convenient, but it's unexpected, and if that had happened, I would have been surprised because when it was following those superhero conventions, you know, her being saved and her stabbing the guy surprised me because that got me excited for where this was going to go, but then it didn't go anywhere. So,
and also the mutant stuff, like how he becomes a mutant, is a little unclear.
Well,
we're just going to lock you into this chamber without oxygen, and you're going to get mutant powers.
Well, I think that's where the injection came into play because you know, from what I recall with the X-Men movies, mutating is kind of like hitting puberty. Something has to happen where it triggers the mutation. Some people are just born with it, but other people, like,
maybe it's Maybelline.
something happens. Something happens to them that brings out that mutation. So like when he's with those people, I think they inject him with something that's supposed to bring out the mutation more, and then all of the torture is supposed to stress his body out to the point where it brings out the mutation. Because like with going back to X-Men, you know, characters like Wolverine, they're born with these powers.
Born with these powers, and then they get honed. Like he gets when he gets adamantium put into his
or like going back to those old movies. What's her name with the striped hair? She can like
Rogue.
Yeah, Rogue.
Yeah.
She never had those powers until like I forget what. I think it's the first movie where she's like in the bedroom with her boyfriend. She kisses him, and you know, there's something about what's going on that triggers that mutation in her, and then that's the first time that's happened. Because at that point, she's had to have been able to touch people with her hands, because you know, if she had that power, she would hurt them.
Yeah.
So that's the first time that's happened. So there was something that triggers that mutation in you, and I think what was happening in that sequence is they're injecting it with something to kind of boost that up. And then all of the torture that they're putting it through is supposed to trigger that mutation. Nice. They even had a throwaway line real quick where it was like, we're just going to keep doing this to you and torturing you
until something happens,
until it cracks or you die. Yeah. So that's how that was supposed to work.
Okay. Well, that makes a little more sense, I guess.
Yeah, and I think they knew what specific mutation they were trying to trigger with him, because they said specifically, hey, you know, we're going to cure you. And that was pretty much what they did. They cured him of cancer and everything else.
Yeah.
But again, it's just a lot of the writing, a lot of that stuff is really kind of thrown away, and I think just the writing in general for this movie failed.
Yeah, there's some of the story points I wish they'd made them a little more clear, and for you, clever dialogue and jokes and things like that.
I wish it was just more clever and funny.
Yeah.
I mean, the little plot points like that and how much the passage of time. Yeah. That stuff, I didn't even think a second thought about.
Well, it still has to function as a movie. If it's going to be somewhat conventional, the conventions have to make sense. Like, you know, it still has to function as a movie, and I still have to understand what's going on. So I run into when I'm watching a movie and I run into these things, you know, I have to, they take me out of the movie for a second.
Well, that's where the big problem of the movie lies, because they're trying to have it both ways. That's going back to, like, you know, if they had Wade Wilson breaking the fourth wall a little bit, or being a little more snarkier and wittier than he actually was in those flashback sequences, then it would feel a little more consistent when he finally becomes Deadpool and he's just full on breaking the fourth wall and doing all of that stuff. But because they didn't do it, it just felt really disjointed. Yeah. And that's where it just wasn't working for me.
And times have changed for movies. That opening credit sequence where all of the credits are like starring one of the hottest guys in the world and also some hot chick. And
the CGI character and the comic relief. Yeah. That was really funny.
Directed by some tool. It was
that was what was really disappointing, because that was really clever and funny.
Yeah, it's like, okay, this is set up. This is going to be great. And that's really the best, most clever thing in the whole movie, really.
I think so. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I thought that was really well done, and then you just get into just the generic, you know.
Maybe not generic, but a little more conventional.
I think it's generic. The referential jokes and, you know, millennial jokes and things like that. And, you know, he makes a joke about the Taken movies, and I'm just kind of sitting there like, that's not a joke, and it's not funny, so I don't know why.
Sounds like Seth MacFarlane did a pass on the script or something.
Ugh. Yeah. Yeah, and anybody who knows me knows I hate Seth MacFarlane and his shows and brand of humor.
I can't believe how much money he gets paid to write that shit.
Don't remind me of that. It's,
Yeah,
it's gonna depress me, and it's gonna piss me off.
It just makes you angry. It's like I can't even make minimum wage at McDonald's. This dude gets paid millions of dollars to write jokes about references to aliens or something. You know?
And not even making a satirical joke about it. Like,
Right.
and that's how I felt
just
about that.
Just making a reference.
That's how I felt about that Ferris Bueller stinger. So there's a stinger at the end of the credits in Deadpool where they're basically doing the stinger from Ferris Bueller where he sticks his head out of the bathroom and says, "What? You're still here?
Right.
Go home. Movie's over." They do that basically word for word in Deadpool, and that's kind of Family Guy stuff. Like, they're not making a joke about it. It's just, hey, we're doing this exact scene from this movie, but we're putting our character here. If you know what this is from, you're in on the joke when it really isn't a joke. It's just that scene. So that kind of stuff just doesn't do it for me because it's kind of cheap and hacky, and it's just, oh, I get what they're referencing.
Oh, and by the way, I don't work at McDonald's.
Neither do I.
I should just make that clear. I was just using it as a...
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Hell, a job's a job, and do what you need to do to make money.
But I just wanted to make clear that I don't do that for a living. That's not my job. But yeah. I was just using it as a...
I hate that guy.
As an example. You know Seth MacFarlane? Yeah.
Yeah, screw that guy.
Yeah. But anyways, Deadpool.
Anyway, back to Deadpool.
Deadpool, go out and see it. It's definitely a movie worth paying some cash to go see in the theater.
Yeah, I say go see it. I mean, it wasn't for me, but I'm pretty sure I'm in the very small minority of people who
there was an audience
didn't like it.
There was an audience of people around us laughing through the whole movie. So
yeah,
it speaks to an audience.
Yeah,
in a way. So
I think most people are gonna really like this movie.
Yeah,
and good on you. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, and for me, I merely liked it. I didn't love it. I didn't have as many problems with it as you did. Like the jokes aside, you know, those minor story quibbles that I had, but mostly I found it not very conventional, but mostly conventional.
Again, I didn't at first when I first saw the movie, I thought the movie sucked, and then when I really thought about it, the movie doesn't suck. It's just underwhelming.
Yeah. And by the way, I've never really liked Ryan Reynolds in anything.
I think the guy can be charming and have charisma. I mean,
He was good in this.
I haven't seen a lot of his movies. I mean, I mostly know him from Harold and Kumar, and his scene in that movie is pretty hilarious. And
he doesn't ruin a movie for me, but I mean, I just never really cared for him.
I think the guy had some. I think the guy had some charming charisma in this movie,
which works. That's what I'm saying. As you know, that he didn't bother me in this movie. He made the movie, I guess I should say.
I just think some of his acting felt a little forced when he's trying to be a little too cartoony and do that really kind of cheeky, cartoonish voice. A lot of it feels kind of forced.
Yeah.
But for the most part, a lot of it was fine. Yeah. But, you know, go see it. You'll probably really enjoy it, and you'll probably have a blast.
Yeah, especially the comic book fans have been waiting for Deadpool to get some justice on screen. They've probably done that. I don't know because I haven't read the comics. I have nothing to compare it to.
I'm sure they'll be pleased. Yeah, I think they will be.
At least compared to the last time they did him in Origins.
That goes without saying.
He's got to be better than that.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I mean, even for me, when I saw that movie back in 2006, 2007, I don't know when that movie came out. Even I knew there was something not right. So I think people are going to be very pleased with it. Yeah. With the character and the movie, it just wasn't for me. Yeah. Yeah.
But other than that, that's it. I think that's all we got. That's all I've got to say. You got anything else?
No, I think that's it. You know, go see Deadpool. You'll probably really dig it. Yeah. I didn't, but I don't think this movie was made for me. So
I agree, except I dug it a little bit more than he did.
Yeah.
But that's all for this week. This has been Podcast Salmonella. I'm Tim.
I'm Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I don't know when we'll be getting together again, but next time whenever we get together, we try to record a podcast, so we'll do it again next time.
We'll make it happen soon.
Yeah. So till next time, we'll see you soon.
See ya.
See ya.